Next, we're turning to, turn of the century, really what's often referred to as eclectic design. We have a lot of overlapping ideas that are going to be happening in this period, roughly from about 1870, give or take, to about 1910, 1920, really up until about World War I, give or take. So let's look at some context at what's going on in the world and what's affecting this style or these styles. Now, of course, the Industrial Revolution will continue to spread across Europe as we're moving into the 1870s, the beginning of this period, really moving into Central Europe. So taking into account Germany, parts of Austria, parts of Eastern Germany, Prussia, etc., in this period of time. And of course, by 1880, more or less all of Europe will have seen the Industrial Revolution. The result is we see a massive change in the society. People start moving into the city and away from the farms. After all, farming has become more efficient. We don't need as many people, and we're seeing an increase in the birth rate. So you need to do something with those extra people. They generally will go to the city to try and make their fortune and make their way in the world, which leads to massive urbanization. We see everything from tenement housing, very crowded conditions, to very wealthy, very large apartments. But we're going to see both sides of that as we move through. We're going to see a rise of Marxism, especially by the middle of the 19th century. Really, it's kicked off arguably by the 1848 liberal revolutions, a little bit before this period that happened across Europe. People starting to argue for labor reform, for constitutional government, for a downfall of the remaining monarchies, and all of these ideas. How does Marxism come into what we're dealing with? Well, it starts to bring in these issues of class struggle, which of course we've had in the past, but now we have a label for it in terms of Marxism. We also see the development of Darwinism in the 19th century. Now, Darwinism itself, evolution, doesn't have a big impact on design, but the idea of social Darwinism, which is an offshoot of Darwinism, not one that Charles Darwin himself comes up with, of course becomes very important. This idea that as a nation, you either need to expand or you must be dying. You must either grow or die. And this creates incredible competition, which of course will in part lead to World War I, amongst other things. We will see continuing imperialism during this period. In fact, primarily during this period, we're seeing imperialism in Asia. Africa has been primarily, or for the most part, has been cut up. So now the focus is on, for example, China and India and parts of Asia, including what is today Vietnam, was at the time French Indochina. The U.S., of course, is becoming a world power following the Civil War. The reason is, after the Civil War, we have the largest standing army in the world. We have battle-hardened veterans. We have just about the largest navy in the world. The British arguably may have us beat on that one. It kind of depends on how you count things. But at the end of the day, the U.S. has flexed its military muscle, even though it's against itself, and decided that they want to get involved in things. So there's this constant fight in the U.S., isolationism versus becoming a world power. We tend towards the world power, even though we talk about isolationism. Let's not forget that we will have the Spanish-American War in 1898 in the middle of our artistic period, which brings more and more Americans in contact with European and Asian ideas. France will stabilize, which is a good thing. After the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, basically the Germans invade France and get as far as Paris. They finally decide, all right, we're going to back off a little bit, and France will become a more stable government, a more stable place, which means we will see a lot of art coming from France. Nationalism becomes an issue. People, again, identifying with their nation more than their hometown or their state. This becomes an issue when it comes to competition. And in fact, becomes an issue with those great exhibitions that we've dealt with already, but will come up again here, where these nations are showing their products, trying to show how they are great in just about every possible area. Artistically, in the 1860s, moving into the 1870s, we are dealing with Impressionism. Why am I bringing up what is happening artistically at the time? Because art and design for a period of time in this 1870s to about World War I period really do reflect one another. A lot of the ideas that we see in art, the move towards abstraction, the move towards more design, will be tied to a lot of what we see amongst Art Nouveau and arts and crafts, as well as other smaller movements or smaller ideas. So it's a good idea to kind of have that parallel in your head, what's going on artistically, along with the ideas of interior design.